So tonight I'm going to talk about a couple of places that not very many birders get to, and for two reasons. One is to show you what's there, but the other is to introduce you to how to get there and what you'd find if you decide to do it. And it's not like going to Africa or Asia or someplace far away. You don't need a passport. Just fly to Anchorage, and then not that long a flight to either the highest point in the U.S., which is Point Barrow, or to 3 hours to the Pribilof Islands. And St. Paul is the one that everybody goes to. There's another one called St. George, but it's a little less accessible to birders. So these are two places. If you just say, I'd like to do something different sometime in June or July, you can just do it. And in my case, I did it as part of a 2-week photo tour as a photographer. Bird photographer. I was doing it as with a bird photography tour. There's 6 of us in this group, and we spent half the time in up on the North Slope, up in Point Barrow, and then half the time in the Pribilof. So, with no further ado, so now for something completely different. Have you been birding up in either of those places? Good. Well, not there. All of us have gone. Well, many of us have gone to Alaska, but just that extra few hours. And you can see something unique. But and the further north you get, the less diverse the bird life is, and so the people who go to each of these places go there for a specific species. And the time you go there, particularly in the far north, is for migratory birds, because if it's 40, 50 below, there aren't very many feathered friends around. So they're all migratory in the far north, and mostly migratory in the Bering Sea. So when you've gone everywhere else, you can go to Point Barrow or the Pribilof. So the first trip was June, a week, basically kind of late mid-June, and that's when you have to get there. Before, after the birds get there and before the mosquitoes come. It's too cold for mosquitoes to survive the winter, but as the summer goes on, the wind blows them up from the south, and apparently, I didn't stick around to find out, but apparently they can make life pretty miserable. So you certainly don't want to be there in August. So two signature species that anybody who goes to Point Barrow as a birder wants to see is spectacled eider on the right and the snowy owl on the left. If you go there and are conscientious, you can certainly see both of them. So the primary reason I think that they're kind of the most spectacular category of species in the far north at Barrow are the eiders, and there are 4 species of eiders. 3 you can see they're the common eider, the one you think it's common. You should be able to see it everywhere. The one you don't see is the common eider, but the other 3, if you spend some time, you're pretty much guaranteed to see it. And I think that this is a king eider, is I think the most spectacular looking, but it's not the rarest, and so birders are there really for the spectacled eider. So in the Point Barrow area, there are 185 species of migratory shorebirds and waterfowl for the most part, and they arrive by way of the Pacific Flyway. So one of the reasons I wanted to go is when you go to the coast and you see shorebirds, you say, well, where do they disappear to? In ancient times, the ancient people couldn't figure out what happened to these birds. And sometimes they believe they, the swallows disappeared into the bottom of lake and, like frogs, kind of hibernated in the mud. And then in the summer, they popped out of the mud and flew around for the summer. And people just didn't have any idea where these things were. And, in the time of Audubon and Wilson and the early ornithologists in North America, it took them a long time to figure out, where some of these birds went. And of course, many of them most of them never figured out where they all came from. Particularly the ones that, go all the way down to South America. We think about, the Arctic terns. So, the place we went to was Point Barrow, and it's part of the North Slope Barrow. And Point Barrow is the highest point in not North America, because there's parts of Canada that are a little higher. But it's certainly the highest in Alaska and therefore the U.S. And it was part of the Naval Petroleum Reserve identified back in, 1920s and 30s. I mean, basically petroleum products were running out of the ground. So it was appreciated that there were petroleum resources in that area. And interestingly, it's kind of the one town that I'm aware of where they get all of their heating from natural gas wells that are, in the area. So when you go there, there's gas well road. Why would you have a gas well road? Because there are gas wells, and there's these pipes that take natural gas, and it's organic. It's coming right out of the ground into town and heats the whole town. So they don't have to worry about getting fuel oil like most towns in the far north. And you can see where Prudhoe Bay is, which is where the cap line runs to, where all the petroleum coming out of Alaska is from. And then, of course, the Anwar, which is the area that conservationists are constantly trying to protect from the oil well drillers. So Point Barrow is still Point Barrow, but the city of Barrow is not Barrow anymore. It's Utqiagvik. Say that 10 times fast. So they decided that, hey, we're a native town and we're going to have a native name, and you Cossacks can just go, just suck it up and live with it. So it's everybody calls it Barrow that isn't living there anyway. It's the northernmost city in the U.S. It's 300 miles or better north of the Arctic Circle. So that means when the sun goes down November 18, it doesn't come up for 65 days. It's like the old expression, I'll be home by sunup, honey, but the night was 6 months long. So, and there's no way to drive there. You can't, you just can't get in a road and drive there. You have to basically fly, or when the ice goes out, you can get there by way of boat. But people just fly up there. About 4,000 people, and the vast majority of them are the Inuit. The native. We used to call them Eskimos, but they call themselves Inuit, and that's what they're called. And they're quite proud of their heritage, and have various festivals every year. And because in the land settlement back in 1970 or thereabouts, land claim settlement, they basically were given stewardship and ownership of large blocks of land. All of the Alaskan natives were. And it's their land, and they are entitled to exploit wildlife as they please. So they, in spite of prohibitions on whaling, they take maybe up to 20 bowhead whales. I mean, these are big whales a year, and they also will hunt caribou, and every now and then you're out looking at birds, enjoying this pristine, environment, and you hear shotguns going off, because they're shooting geese for dinner, and it's spring, it's not hunting seasons don't amount to anything. There's a controversy about this, back when the Fish and Game started trying to clamp down, and so they arrested one guy for shooting a goose, and 300, of his closest friends came in and turned themselves in for shooting geese too. And, basically Fish and Game said, this isn't going to work, and they basically slaughter whatever they want to slaughter. But there's enough abundance, and they occupy a small enough footprint that it doesn't seem to have threatened the survival of these species. There are seals that they also will hunt, and I guess there are walruses around. I didn't see any, but there are some. There's also the ever-present hazard of polar bears, and if any of you know anything about polar bears, they're nothing you want to mess with. So they have a routine polar bear patrol that will make sure that you don't get eaten while you're there. So its main business is it supplies support services to oil field. A lot of seasonal workers live there and then work in the North Slope with the oil industry. There is some tourist industry, a good bit of it being birders. One of the obviously important features is that it's cold. And when you get to, you can see it gets down to 21, negative 21 degrees, in February. But when we were there in June, it typically would be around, 40s at the highest, and 30s, 29 or 30. So there was still snow, but it was gradually melting off when we got there. So if you get there too early, the roads are impassable because of snow. And when we were there, they were muddy. There were pools of water, but they were mostly passable. So when deciding when to go is pretty important, because if you get there too early, you just can't get there on the roads. And if you get there too late, you get eaten by mosquitoes, and you get there too early, and the birds haven't arrived yet. So how do you get there? Well, first you fly to Anchorage, and I put the picture of Potter's Marsh there. I didn't go to Potter's Marsh. I have friends that do. We were on Lake Hood, the biggest slope plane, airport in the world, basically. And there are birds to be seen. So if you're stuck there for a day or two, you can arrange with a local Audubon group or a professional birder to go look at birds. So every day you just get in a plane and fly the barrel, and it lands. And when you land, you get the impression this is the last frontier. It's you get inside, and they basically the place is packed with locals who are there that collect huge boxes of stuff that they've shipped in from the outside, and there's no nice conveyor belts. So everything is just dumped out, and it's gets a little hectic. And then you get out, and almost all the vehicles are beat up. You can't do. I didn't see any Hertz or Avis dealers. It's you take what you can get, but you do want something with some high clearance. You don't really have to have a 4-wheel drive, but it's nice. So you can see the picture. Where's my pointer? You can see this is what the baggage claim looks like. So there's 150 people squeezed in this area, and they're just dumping these huge boxes out. There are 3 or 4 places to stay. I stayed in the top of the world hotel there at the top, but there are a couple of others, so you can usually get accommodations. And if you want to go there by yourself, as I tell you, you can do it. You don't have to be part of some kind of a group. If you're at all experienced with going someplace and finding birds, it's not like there's, the roads. The roads maybe got, most you can get is maybe 10, 12 miles from Barrow. So you can just drive down the road and you run into the same birders, several times a day doing the same thing, just going back and forth on the same roads. So this is just illustrates you don't go out to Point Barrow. You have to basically be accompanied and pay a lot of money to somebody to take you out in an ATV or something. So basically you're restricted to this area that I've illustrated here. And that's, it's maybe, 20 miles in a longest direction. So it's not like you can go out and get lost. If you're on any kind of a road, you're not going to get lost. So it's the places that you go where most everything is either on the Keikita Road or the Keikita Road or Gas Well Road. And you can see when we were there, we get about to here, and then there was this big bank of snow. And then you can go down here to Freshwater Lake. This is there's a walking trail that goes to where was it? Who is the plane? The comedian and his pilot crash. I'll think of it here in a bit. But you have to walk to get there. When I was there, this area was all ice, and you could look out on the ice and see in that area a lot of gulls. We did hear Harry talked about a yellow-billed loon. We saw one flying over. They were apparently heading across here, but we never saw any land. We did see a Pacific loon, but nothing, not much of anything besides that among the loons. So again, this is where you can go. Each one of these kind of marks a hot spot, and you can go on eBird and check out the hot spots and see what they're seeing today. And there's always professional birders up there. And if you're, if you're friendly and polite, you can exchange sightings. Otherwise, you can just glare at each other. So this is what you're there for. And again, it's not like you go to South America and, or Central America and see, hundreds of species. You're going to see Bering sandpiper. You're going to see pectoral sandpipers, dunlins, the phalaropes. We only saw the Pomeranian Jaeger, glaucous gulls, herring gulls. The ivory, not all that's white is ivory. There's supposed to be ivory gulls, but I don't think we ever had a confirmed sighting. You are going to see snowy owls, but not necessarily up close and personal. And again, the only loon we saw was the Pacific loon. There are tundra swans. We saw them, but they were quite a ways away. A fair number of white-fronted geese. We did see brant, pintails, scalps, and then the eiders. Long-tailed duck used to be called old squaws, but they're now, that's kind of considered racist, I guess. So they're now long-tailed ducks. There were American golden plovers. These are the ones that fly, 3,000 miles in 4 days or something to fly out to, down to Alaska and other faraway islands. Is just unbelievable what they can do. We saw plovers and dowitchers, semi-pollinated sandpipers, and that was, that's it. It's not like we did see some a few other species. I'll illustrate. The redneck scent we actually saw, even though it's unusual. I think it's fair to say, people were quite delighted to see it. It was not commonly seen there. Sea ice, so there's no boats coming in, and there's limits to any birds that you're going to see there. But usually there would be, you don't only have a short area there to visualize them. the remarkable thing about this place is there's no trees, and it's tundra. And it's tundra, it's frozen, 600 feet down in places. And so it's frozen solid in the winter. And then in the summer, you get these pools. But for the most part, the pools are shallow enough you can actually, if you have a chest waders, on wade across. Now, we only had, knee-high boots. So we didn't, try to wade across the lakes, but you can kind of slog your way around. And if you want to take pictures of eiders, you got to go where they are, and that means slogging, where you can see them out there. And, if you're a photographer, you can't just, count two and declare victory. You have to go out there and get a picture of them. And they may not necessarily sit still for you. No trees, not a single tree anywhere. But when we were there, the flowers were starting to blossom. There's some beautiful little flowers. And you can see the kind of the attire of the day. You've got to have some kind of a warm cap on and some kind of warm coat on and gloves and boot like the rigger. You're supposed to get some kind of get a permit from the regional office. I don't know how rigorously that's enforced. My impression was that it's not, but technically you're supposed to do that. So again, more pictures of landscape, and you need a lens that has some reach. I did not take my 600 millimeter because the current lighter put the fear of God into us, so we weren't going to be able to get anything that big on the airplane out to the Pribilofs. But in fact, I'm sure if I brought it, I could have got out there. In fact, one of them did. And the more reach you have out here on the Tundra, the better you like it. So this is a spectacled eider. It's kind of the signature species that everybody is there for, because it's hard to see this bird pretty much anywhere else that you're going to be able to reach, because it's mostly restricted to the coast of Alaska and Siberia. And so, every bird that shows up wants to check that one off the list before they go looking for anything else. And you can appreciate why this is, given that it's, basically this range is pretty much, over in Siberia and, and coastal, Bering coast. The king eider is, I think it's a more spectacular bird, and you can see it elsewhere in the world, as well as New Arctic, and you can kind of see its distribution. Interestingly, when we went out to the Pribilofs, doing a little research, I discovered that it's you can book a hunting trip to St. Paul to shoot king eiders, which I thought was kind of sacrilegious, but that's and they hear this. You watch this YouTube video that shows them out there in the middle of the winter, high-fiving each other for all of the king eiders they've murdered. Steller's eider is another kind of much sought after denizen of the far north, and its distribution is as illustrated. So, these are, if you're a birder, that's kind of those are the top three on your list. And then you start thinking about other things. Now, this pectoral sandpiper is just amazing. They have this apron in there with their breeding plumage, and they make this unbelievable booming sound, and they're just amazing guys to watch. And it's a time of year when they are keen and sheen. But if you look at this illustration of their migratory routes, you can see they go way down in South America. So the migration routes of these birds is just unbelievable. And you can see we don't see them around here, but I guess more in the central U.S. They at least pass through. Long-billed ballatures, see here and more generally distributed. The Bering sandpiper. Again, look at this impressive migratory route. Dunlins, again, these are critters we see down here, and then we see them up there. And one of the things that's interesting, there's no tree. So, if you're up there and you're looking, you're a male and you're looking for a suitable mate, you can't sit on a fence post, like a morning lark and sing. So they'll fly up in the air and just float along and vocalize and then gradually coast down. And there's several of these species that will do that. And it's just, just amazing to see these birds. And then you hear them off some distance and then you look up and, there they are. Trying to, attract falling. So one of the birds that it doesn't winter there, but it winters in Alaska and Canada is the snow bunnies, and they do the same kind of thing. There's this beautiful warbling song. Semi-pollinated sandpipers will hover and sing. Sometimes it seems for minutes. They just soar and sing at the same time. It's amazing to watch. This is a Lapland larkspur, and you can see its nest. So these are concealed. They're very unobtrusive, but you're walking along and occasionally see something like this. The golden plover, just Alaska to Hawaii and back, in just a few days. I mean, it's just unbelievable what these birds do in these migrations. You kind of figure if they get there, if they get a couple degrees off on their navigation, things could not go well, or if they run into bad weather. There are red phalaropes, and you can see the distribution there, and then there are neck phalaropes, and they seem to kind of, even though they're different species, they seem to kind of hang around together, and it's good fun to watch them spin around, in the small pools by the road. Snow bunnies, all the snow bunnies I've seen before have really not very pretty faces. They just look dirty, but up there they have some really attractive looking snow bunnies. So that's a snow bunny that I can take a picture of and show at the Audubon Club. And then there's long-tailed ducks, which I spent season fishing crab in Dutch Harbor, and long-tailed ducks and harlequins were the most common species that I can remember seeing back in 1970. And then again, the only loon we saw was the Pacific loon. And there weren't in abundance, but in the saltwater pool or lagoons, there always were a few of them. In addition, I think I saw some scout. Now, you also will see, I was just shocked. There's a buried thrush up there. A buried thrush doing up there? Crazy. And the redneck stint, which is, I think, more of a Siberian bird, but, and we spent a long time chasing it around and getting a picture of it. And then the plover. Interesting, the plover inhabited the cemetery. Geese, white-fronted geese, and brant. What do you think? Well, there ought to be Canadian geese. Well, they were over in Canada. We were in Alaska, so we didn't see many of them. And we did see some tundra swan. You think about, if you go to the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge, they're dedicated to the tundra swans. And you get up on the tundra, and there were a few, but I'm sure that there are plenty of other places they could go and not worry about getting shot out of the sky by a trigger-happy Inuit. And we did see brant. Lots of gulls. Tim was talking about how back in the day we all called them seagulls. So lots of seagulls. But the lost gull, which is the most distinctive one, doesn't show up until the fall migration. And I wasn't going to hang around and with the mosquitoes for that privilege. The only Jaeger we saw was Pomeranian, and they are present in some profusion, and there's plenty of migratory little birds and birds' eggs for them to feast on, I'm sure. So the other signature species that everybody wants to see are the snowy owls, and we saw a fair number of snowy owls. The problem is that they would be approximately 100 miles away. You see this little tiny white dot. So is that a little speck of snow that's left, or is that an owl? And so start slogging across the tundra, and when you get about 200 yards from them, they fly, and you can just have fun chasing them everywhere. So the place that we had the most luck seeing was a storage yard that had a lot of lumber piled up on. And for some reason, maybe there was a popular place for voles or mice, but there always seemed to be some there. And the females are larger and have less white, and the males are smaller and are really snowy. They are striking, but they're not as easy to photograph as you think. You go all this way up here, and there's all these snowy owls. Well, you got to be able to get some good pictures, and we really had to work to it. So that's that completes my discussion about birding in the area of Point Barrow. Any questions before we move on, Tim? No, it's too cold. No, unless they can hibernate. I mean, when it gets down to 30 below zero, I don't think that many going to survive. Any other questions? Maybe some chickens in somebody's coop. I didn't actually see any chickens. So, and now for something else that's completely different. When I was in fishing King Crab in Dutch Harbor, I would hear about the Pribilofs and the fur seal rookery there. And so it's always something that I wanted to do. And the reason I actually picked this particular trip was that I went to both places. And so if you go there, you need to go basically about the same time, the very end of June or 1st of July, in order to see the migratory bird species you want to see. The seals, the fur seals, the northern fur seals, start coming back in May. And the males come back first and establish territories, and then the females start coming in. When we were there in late June, we went to after we had been to Barrow. The females were just starting to come in. Shortly after we land, they have the pups, and then they're there, I think, in August or so, and then they're gone. So the birds are gone, the seals are gone, but they do have these what they call of Arctic foxes. So that's one critter that doesn't migrate. So the people who live there like to call it the Galapagos of the North. They do have this tremendous numbers of critters, but again they are seasonal, and if you go there at the wrong time, you ain't going to see much of anything. So the reason people go there for birds are mostly the puffins and the auklets and the red-legged kittiwakes, which, black-legs are a dime a dozen, but kittiwake red-legs are pretty unique. They're kind of the largest colonies in the Pribilofs. It's located in the Bering Sea, 250 miles north of Dutch Harbor, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of these fur seals that used to come there. Well, there's still a lot of seals, but the commercial harvesting of pollock and other fish have resulted in a substantial decrease in their numbers. They're not threatened, but there are fewer of them that back in the day when they were harvested in their hundreds of thousands each year for the wonderful fur that before they had fleece and Gore-Tex, it's hard to beat nice fur seal coat. And this is the best place to get them. So St. Paul Island, there are actually 4 islands in Pribilof. St. Paul, St. Peter, which is inhabited. There's also a Otter Island and a Walrus Island. There's no otters left. There's no walruses left. If you're going to go anywhere, you go to St. Paul. Closer to the Bering Straits is St. Lawrence Island. You can go to St. Lawrence Island, but it's probably not as easy to get to, and doesn't have as many birds, and they're aren't really set up to accommodate birders as well as St. Paul. So if you want to go in the Bering Sea in an island, you go to St. Paul. And it was discovered in 1786 by this guy who was looking for where the motherlode of seals was. They'd see these fur seals, and they would see them, in the spring swimming north, so they knew there had to be a rookery for them. The Aleuts had rumors of where they were up there someplace, but after quite a number of years of looking, Pribilof found it, and basically, the Bering Sea is famous for its terrible fogs, and he basically almost ran into the island, and in the fog, and could hear the seals barking, and didn't take very long before lots of other sealers had figured out where he was going, and they, as anticipated, overfished the resources, and eventually it had to be regulated. The Russians did until we bought Alaska in 1867. And so, Seward's icebox, Seward's Folly, and then we took over, the regulation of the commercial seal harvesting, which really ended, for all intents and purposes, ended in 66, but to some degree continued to 84, and then there's been no commercial harvesting since then. So, so we talked about these native land corporations that own the Arctic salt, and there's a total, I think, about 30 different of these, about 13 different regional corporations under this Alaska Native Land Claims process. And this one called TDX owns the islands of Pribilof Islands. But interestingly, they also own the motel we stayed by Lake Hood, and they own a parking garage. So they were given money as part of the settlement, and they used the money to have some commercial operations. And they also try to have a fishery out there, but the interlopers have really cut down the halibut harvest and overfished the pollock harvest, and they do have fisheries that were you're resupplied, so boats will come in and be resupplied, but it's limited. They have a Trident fruit processing plant there, but it was shut down the year I was there, ago, because they couldn't get any ice. So they didn't have an ice machine, and so there was no fishing. And it's one of the few industries that if you're a able-bodied working man, you can do on a seasonal basis. And they just said, too bad. Interestingly, the deadliest catch, which is a program about TV program about crab fishing in the Bering, uses St. Paul as its one of its landing sites, and they store their traps there, their crab traps there in the off season. So if you go there, it's owned by the corporation, the TDX Corporation, the Native Corporation owns it, and they have created a tourist industry, or tried to facilitate one. They provide a hotel, and they hire people to give you a tour, and they have vans that can take you around. There were a couple of individuals who just gone there, so I guess you can just go there, and then they have stayed with private homes and rented vehicles that were kind of resented by the locals because they really weren't contributing much to the economy. So the preferred way is to call 907-249-4448 and arrange to go there. And typically people go as a group, but if you can, if there's a place available and you can tag along, you may be able to arrange it. It's, again, the island is not that big. It's about, 8 or 10 miles long. So, it's small enough that you have to have a vehicle. You can't walk everywhere, but you can see most everything in just a few days. Now, one of the problems is, because of these awful fogs and terrible weather, it's not unusual for the Raven Airlines not to get there. You may wait a day or two or three or four to get there, and you may be stuck a day or two or three or four to come back. The year that we were there, a year and a half or so ago, we were there, they just recently had no planes in for 2 weeks because the weather station broke down, and the Raven Air, which is, I think, owned by Alaska Air, refused to fly there unless they had a weather station to tell them what the weather was going to be like. So they just, if you were there, you're stuck. What can I say? So that's kind of, if you live in a place like that, you don't go and look at the mailbox every day. If you don't hear an airplane coming, there's not going to be any mail in the box. So you kind of come to realize that you are kind of at the end of the world in a place like that. So again, it's the amount of industry is pretty limited. The sales are there. The federal government is out of it, so it's a state of Alaska. Basically fisheries. But there will be federal wildlife people that are involved. And that's a source of income. The federal government actually bought the cliffs and the rookeries from the corporation, gives them a few $1 million. And they, it's regulated. There's, it's kind of like around here. There's strict times when you can, be anywhere near the wildlife. To get there, you go on a de Havilland 20-passenger airplane, and it's 3.5-hour flight. But they don't just fly there. They're afraid that they're going to run out of gas if they run into weather, and so they stop at halfway there at vessel and refuel. So here you're flying. The plane has enough fuel to go there. Gas up and no, you stop just as I say, make a safety stop, because if you get there and get stuck in the cloud bank. And you can't get back, it could get ugly. And it's not cheap, it's a couple $1,000 round trip. Get out there and you add that to the price of the tour, which is, basically a better part of something, basically $1,000 a day. And if you go there for, 4 days, 3-4 days, that's what you have to end up having to pay. And you stay in the hotel, It used to be that everybody had to share a shower and bathroom, but now they've converted it so that pretty much every room has its own bathroom and shower. These are doubles. And then there's a communal kitchen. Now, when the Titan seafood place was open, apparently you would eat there, but they were closed. And so, the tour guides actually, fixed the meals, and they got these pre-frozen meals. They didn't get them from Costco, but they might as well. They got them from the hotel in Anchorage. The food services people made the food and froze it and sent it out there, and they would just, give you, you would warm it, or they would warm it, and people, just kind of made do. So this is the St. Paul Island. It's a volcanic island. So it's kind of some cinder blocks, cinder cones scattered around, and it has these sheer cliffs that are where the migrating birds would nest. And this is where you'll find. Thank you. This is where you'll kind of find the nesting species and the colonies. And again, you want to be there. If you want to see the auks and auklets and puffins, you need to get there basically at the end of June, first part of July. And so just some pictures of the geography. You can see as Pancake Flat is also covered with tundra, although it's not frozen down to 600 feet like it is up north. And then the main thing is that are these high cliffs around most of the island. The island's about 500,000 years old, but the most recent eruption was in 1943. Interestingly, there are mammoth bones were found that date to about 6,000 years ago, which was apparently about 6,000 years after they went extinct everywhere else. So they held out there, and the claim was that something about since they went extinct, and it's just a small island, and they're obviously you couldn't support very many of these big woolly mammoths, but apparently the claim was that they did something to the fresh water supply. They knocked the bank down or something, and they ended up. I don't know that they died of thirst, but again, it's just remarkable how relatively recently these critters live. So this is, if you St. Paul is a town. The town of St. Paul is on this little headland. The harbor is, and this is one of the rookeries, and this is called Reef Point. And this is one of two places they have a blind that you can go and look out on them. And every year they come and count them. And the locals, even they don't let you take pictures of it, but every year they harvest hundreds of these things for their own, subsistence use. I don't think they can really do anything with the pelts, but for the blubber and seal meat, this is what they've been eating. There also is a herd of reindeer that were introduced back in 1911 and have fluctuated in numbers, but they can hunt reindeer. We never saw reindeer. We saw evidence of them, but we never saw any of the reindeer herd. Moving right along now. So this is the crab traps left by the deadliest catch, but obviously they weren't fishing crabs because Canada is closed. But so there are supposedly 287 species have been recorded. And again, the times to get there to see all of these species that are highlighted in blue are at the end of June and the first part of July. Now, to be point, I'll say, okay, well, when I go there, so where's the one place that I've got to go in order to see what I've got to see? And it's this place called Reef Point, which is, you can see this rocky cliff, and you can go there and see all three species of auklets and the puffins, both species of puffins, and the mears and the kittiwakes all in one spot, as well as the red-faced cormorant. So basically, if there's one place you're going to go, you just go there, and there's one spot that you can go and kind of hang out. There's room enough for about 3 people, and you just take your turn. And if all you want to do is fly to St. Paul and go to Reef Point, you'll see pretty much everything that you're going to see in a matter of a couple hours. The Reef Point also is where that Tortoiseel rookery is. And when we were there, the cows hadn't come in, but the Beachmaster bulls were busy establishing their territories. So Reef Point is right down here. So here's a town, and here's Reef Point. And so it's this cliff, which is the one place that you're going to go and get the most bang for your buck. Up here along the cliffs, is another place to see puffins and nesting waterfowl. And there's kind of less density elsewhere. This is the tufted puffins, and they nest not in burrows the way that I'm used to seeing them in, for example, Iceland. They nest in crevices in these cliffs. So they're, obviously everybody loves a puffin. They're, quite comical looking critters. I'm not aware that they harvest them very much the way that they do in Iceland. In Iceland, they don't advertise it, but you can get all the puffin steak that you want. The horned puffins, I think, it's easy to kind of understand why they would call these the tufted puffins, but to turn these little black streaks into horns, you have to look at it. But these are the other species. And, they are so cute. And what can I say? Most of them are best seen in photograph right there at Reef Point. You just have to take your time, take your turn. There are 3 species of auklets, and they're all in this picture. There's the crested auklet, the parakeet auklet, and the reese auklet. So, and they're all. This is This is one picture with all 3: reese, parakeet, and tufted, and they're cute little birds, and just unbelievable. They will just sit on these sloping sheer rocks and camp out and pose for you. So if you drive past, I'll show you a map just in a bit. This is the high bluffs you have to drive. I think I illustrated where it was. And again, there's another place for the same figures, but not in the same density. So they'll be that's over up in here. And Anton's Lake, there's Anton's Well here, and there's for some reason at least the last auklets are there in glass profusion. So this is that high bluffs cliff. You can see the thick-billed mules there nesting. The red-legged kittiwakes that hard to see, I guess, pretty much everywhere else. Black-legged kittiwakes, and then the thick-billed mules. And these amazing red-faced cormorants. I photographed one yellow-faced cormorant. I thought that was pretty amazing, and people ought to be impressed. Nobody seemed to be impressed, but they are, kind of remarkable looking critters. Then the mures, they have these thick-billed ones have this white streak gape line to distinguish them. those are those least viewers that on this nest in these, this rocky shore. It's just amazing how many of these little birds are tucked in there. Few little buggers. Amazingly, there's a the Pacific Rays there, and you say, well, what are these little guys doing out here? But they are resident birds, and they will answer when you play the vocalization on Sibley's, and they all, are cute little guys. I never heard of gray crowned, I knew anything about rosy finches, but they have a colony again of resident rosy finches, and there were a couple of ornithologists there from different universities, been coming back for 20 years, kind of capturing them in mist nets and sexing them, and recording their behaviors, and every year they will come back and enjoy spending time in the rock quarry with these gray-crowned rosy finches, just snow bunting as a migrant. And in one of the places I look for vagrants, at least, would be these holding up for these crab traps, because they're kind of protected from predators to some degree. This is a picture of a Lapland longspur hanging out there. So there's leaf sandpipers, and you can see their distribution. And western sandpipers are all know and love. And the rock sandpipers, which nest inland, it was in the tundra. Semi-pollinated plovers, little guys. And we had great fun chasing this curlew sandpiper. So some birders, there weren't very many birders there, because, they basically came, through that tunnel, and we were the only tour. So there were, hardly anybody else there. But some resident birders had seen this, so the word went out, and we spent, I think half a day trying to stay this thing down and get nice pictures. And it basically breed exclusively in the Siberian Arctic, apparently. We saw ancient murrelets. They were they never came ashore, but they were in the surf, kind of like we'll see rafts of harlequins out off the coast. So there'd be smaller numbers of these pairs or small groups, and they actually responded to the bird calls, and trying to investigate. They didn't land, but they got close enough that I could get. This was as long pictures as I could get. And then the harlequins were seen in large flocks floating offshore. I did see a short-eared owl, which apparently is annual common migrant. So those are the birds. But the other, if you're interested in wildlife, not just birds, these northern fur seals are quite remarkable critters. These big bulls, they go up to 600 pounds. You don't want to mess with them. They apparently, for short distances, can run faster than you can, and they can be aggressive, and the testosterone's up, they can bite you. So it's the same if you've ever gone to Antarctica. They're different species, but the same principle applies. You don't get very, very close to these guys, partly because it's federally protected and you can't mess with them, but partly because you don't want them to bite you. About half the global population is there. Some of the rookeries have up to 100,000 cells even now. And again, the females get very shortly after they're making landfall. And again, they were just starting to come in at the end of June. So more pictures. And they were, there's a kind of quite a sad history of how they native Aleutians were basically enslaved overseas, first for the Russians and then for the American fur companies. Um, it's fun, juveniles have fun, but the poor, and then I'm sure they can catch fish and have a good time. But the big males have to camp out on their, in their territories, and they don't eat for weeks at a time. Interestingly, the Allies evacuated during the Second World War. In most of these places, they never came back, but they did come back to St. Paul and kind of resume activities. Their seal harvesting was after the Second World War. The one other endemic critter is the blue fox. Most Arctic foxes are white, but this is a blue, they call it blue. You can decide what color you think it is. So I think about 98% of the foxes there are the brown, and that's all we saw. The ones that live near town, are almost tame. They scavenge from the, the garbage and anything that they can grab. When you get out further from the town, they're a little less approachable. Not all that attractive critters, but they are what they are. So that's the end of the story. This is actually, I think about 15 years ago, there was a couple of South Cross lovers, both went off the cliffs there at Reef Point, and these crosses memorialize that sad event. So we're about, it's kind of a tough place to live. Okay, any questions, comments, observations?
Do you have any special arrangements you have to make for the time?
It wasn't. The question is photography gear. If you're taking pictures in the tropics, you have to worry about your lens fogging up. If you take pictures, in Antarctica, you have the same kind of issues of your lens getting condensation on it. We didn't really have much of a problem. We didn't have that problem at all. And Pribilof, it did drizzle a little bit sometimes. It was foggy for the most part, but it wasn't. That wasn't a problem. And certainly wasn't a lot of torrential rains as you have to worry about your equipment. And it didn't really get that cold up in Bering either. I mean, it would be 30, it'd be 40 degrees. So it wasn't like you had to leave your gear out on the, outside, to keep it from frosting up, when you went out in the morning. Well, the interesting thing, and it was the land of the midnight sun, and so it never got dark, up the Arctic Circle. So, when do you bird? I mean, there's only so many hours, and how much time can you spend out there? So, we would often end up staying out till 11 o'clock at night, and then come back at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then kind of sleep in the middle of the day because activities seem to be greater in the early and late, like elsewhere. But really, early might be 4 o'clock in the morning, and late might be 11 o'clock at night. So, your circadian rhythms are likely to be pretty disrupted, and you're spent most of the day in some level of sleep deprivation. Other questions? I just took my Canon, 200 to 500, standard lens, as my primary wildlife lens. Yeah. And it was certain these pictures were all taken with that, and they're adequate. I wish I had taken my 600, although it's